Notice that the AutoChartist platform is divided into two halves, the complete pattern half and the emerging pattern half. Now, since we are looking for alerts to set up, we're looking for chart pattern, potential chart pattern trades, our focus will be on the lower half, this emerging patterns half of the platform. And notice this is just something individual that I've done with this particular AutoChartist copy. You can set this up however you'd like. I like to have a tab for each one of the pairs that I track. So you'll notice here I've got the Euro US dollar, the British pound US dollar, the Aussie, and so forth, as well as some of the indices and stocks that I watch as well. Okay, so this platform actually reflects Forex, indices, and stocks, as well as the new Forex pattern search that's available. So when I am looking at potential trades, I want to set up proactively. I'll focus on the emerging pattern side, and this particular heading, the emerging patterns heading, what it's ideally suited for, what it's ideally suited for is more proactive setups. In other words, for example, I have a rising wedge pattern that has formed. Okay? And what I'd like to do when I see this type of pattern is take a look at the lines and levels that the pattern has showing me again this rising wedge. I want to determine what kind of pattern this is. Now, a rising wedge, much like its name suggests, is a trending pattern, which means rising, meaning think uptrend, and wedge, obviously the shape. This pattern should be occurring in an uptrending market. Rising wedges are essentially climbing patterns that while the actual price action is heading higher, simultaneously price action is being squeezed into an ever-narrowing range. So these lines are not parallel, and we'll also consider this pattern to be self-limiting. Now let me explain what that means. Essentially, if the pattern does nothing more than continue to climb, at some point we will break the resistance of the wedge pattern. We'll break this resistance here, this top line of the wedge, if prices do nothing more than climb, because at some point we will reach what we call the narrows of this pattern. Again, imagine these two lines essentially putting a squeeze on price. We'll reach the narrows of the pattern and run out of room. Prices will literally run out of room, and just by virtue of that will break out. Now, not that that is a bad signal, but there's less value in a pattern that simply runs out of room than with a pattern break where we can see momentum, where we can see buying surge, or we can see, for example, selling pressure break the support or resistance of the pattern. Right now we can see the resistance is being tested with these highs to the upside, so it's actually trying to set up potentially a breakout, a momentum, a continuation of this climbing pattern. There are a few clues that AutoChartist will give us in terms of the value of this pattern, things to watch, things to be aware of, both positive and negative. So let's take a look, because I think a lot of traders will look at a chart pattern outside the context of the trend. Well, a rising wedge, just as its name tells you, should be occurring in a rising market. We should not trade a rising wedge within a sideways market. In fact, really, how can we even form a legitimate rising anything within a market that's moving sideways, right? So let's take a look at some of the quality indicators so we can get a better idea of what this rising wedge is actually communicating, this rising wedge alert is actually communicating to us.